The dawn after the first major protest arrived over Olorunda like a quiet promise. The streets, still dusty and battered from the previous week's demonstrations, were now alive with a different energy, one of triumph and cautious hope. Emma walked beside Daniel, their shadows long in the morning sun, as they surveyed the town square. Fires from the previous night's celebration still smoldered in scattered barrels, but the warmth of the people's determination lingered far more powerfully. Chisom had called a meeting early in the morning. Volunteers and local leaders gathered in the small hall behind the church, a space barely large enough for the crowd. She spoke with the calm authority that had inspired thousands the previous week, her eyes reflecting both the exhaustion of relentless activism and the fire that refused to die. "We have won a battle, but the war is far from over," she said. "The government will retaliate. The insurgents will strike where they can. Our work is just beginning. We will protect the people, reclaim what has been stolen, and rescue those still in captivity." Emma listened, every word sinking into him like stone. He had thought that victory in the streets would bring immediate change, but Chisom's reminder brought him back to reality. There were still Ruth and the others, still villages under threat, still a government that had proven it would not act unless forced. The day was spent organizing. Teams were assigned to protect vulnerable communities, deliver food and supplies, and track movements of both government forces and insurgents. Emma and Daniel joined one such team, traveling to nearby villages that had reported suspicious activity. Along the way, Emma noticed families clutching children, praying silently, eyes wide with both fear and hope. By evening, reports began to trickle in. Insurgents had moved to intercept the volunteer teams. Armed men were spotted on the outskirts of Enugu, and a small firefight had already erupted near a supply route. Emma's heart raced. He had never fired a weapon in his life, but he now found himself clutching a rifle borrowed from a local militia, ready to protect the innocent. Chisom, aware of the increasing danger, coordinated with volunteers through mobile radios and runners. Her voice was calm, commanding, and fearless. "Stay in pairs. Protect the villagers. Do not engage unless necessary. Report everything. We move together." The night brought chaos. Smoke rose from a distant village where insurgents had touched homes in retaliation. Emma and Daniel guided terrified families through narrow paths, dodging gunfire and shouting as they moved. Mothers sobbed, children screamed, and the sound of footsteps mixed with distant explosions created a cacophony of fear and courage. Amid the chaos, Emma saw the first real sign of hope. Emerged from the woods, guided by local volunteers who had intercepted the insurgents. Among them was a girl who resembled Ruth. Emma's heart leapt. He ran forward, calling her name, and she turned, eyes wide with recognition and relief. Daniel burst into tears, and the rescued girls clung to him, their small hands shaking. Chisom arrived moments later, her face streaked with sweat and soot. She knelt beside the girls, whispering words of comfort and encouragement. Emma felt a surge of gratitude and admiration. This woman had led them through the impossible, and yet, she showed no sign of slowing down. That night, as the rescued children were settled in safe houses, Emma and Chisom met quietly in the corner of the hall. The flickering candlelight cast shadows across their faces, highlighting the exhaustion etched into their features. "We're making progress," Emma said softly, almost afraid to speak it aloud. "Progress is not enough," Chisom replied. "Every rescue is a victory, yes, but the government is still corrupt. Insurgents are still free. And there are more children who need our help. We can't rest." Emma nodded. He knew she was right. Hope had been restored to some, but the battle was far from over. The night stretched into the early hours of morning as they reviewed maps, routes, and reports, planning the next phase of their campaign, a coordinated effort to protect the innocent, challenge corrupt officials, and dismantle the insurgents' hold on the region. The world outside Olorunda began to take notice. Social media platforms were flooded with images and videos of citizens protecting children, confronting armed men, and singing songs of unity and defiance. International media picked up the stories, and soon, pressure on the Nigerian government intensified. Headlines shouted, "Citizens lead nation's fight against kidnappers and corruption." Despite the growing support, danger loomed. Emma knew that insurgents would not relent, and the government, feeling the strain of international scrutiny, might resort to desperate measures. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him like never before. But as he looked around at Chisom, at Daniel, at the faces of the rescued children, he realized one undeniable truth: the people were stronger than fear, stronger than bullets, and stronger than corruption itself. The morning sun crept slowly over Olorunda, casting long shadows across streets still scarred by weeks of protest. Emma awoke with a heaviness in his chest. Though the citizens had achieved some victories, the war was far from over. The insurgents had retreated into the forests, but their eyes were always watching, waiting for a mistake. And the government was restless, irritated by the undeniable proof that the people were capable of taking action where officials had failed for years. Chisom convened the volunteer leaders in a narrow room behind the church, maps spread across a wooden table, candles flickering in the dim light. She traced lines with her finger, pointing to villages still under threat. "We have rescued some," she said. "But many are still in the hands of the kidnappers. We need to move tonight. The government cannot control us, but the insurgents can strike if we are careless. Everyone must understand one wrong step could cost lives." Emma studied the maps, memorizing paths through the forests, river crossings, and abandoned farm roads. The plan was audacious. Teams of volunteers would move in small groups, rescuing the kidnapped girls and guiding families to safe zones. The challenge was enormous, but the urgency was greater. By nightfall, Emma, Daniel, and a small team of volunteers set off under the cover of darkness. Their faces were painted with soot and mud, disguises to help them blend into the forests. The air was heavy, damp with fog, and the sounds of nocturnal animals mixed with distant whispers of human movement. Every shadow seemed a threat. Hours passed, each step careful and deliberate. Then, in a clearing, they saw them tents, campfires, and armed men guarding a small group of girls. Emma's heart raced. Ruth and several others were among them. He signaled to the team to move quietly, circling around the camp to find a safe entrance. Chisom's voice came softly through the radio. "Wait for my signal. Count every second. Precision saves lives." The volunteers crouched low, hearts pounding. Emma felt the sweat on his back, the weight of the rifle in his hands, and the fear threatening to paralyze him. But he looked toward the girls scared, huddled together, hoping, and pushed the fear aside. Courage, he realized, was not the absence of fear, but the will to act despite it. The signal came, and the volunteers sprang into action. They moved with a careful speed, neutralizing guards silently, guiding the girls out of the tents, and covering each other as they retreated through the forest. Emma felt Ruth's small hand slip into his, her grip tight with trust. Every heartbeat was loud, every movement critical. Suddenly, a shout rang out. One of the insurgents had noticed them. Gunfire erupted. Emma dove to the ground, pulling Ruth behind him. Others responded swiftly, covering the retreat and returning fire when necessary. The forest exploded with noise, shouts, gunfire, and the terrified cries of children. Chisom coordinated from a distance, guiding teams to converge and ensure no one was left behind. Emma kept moving, guiding Ruth and the other girls along the safest path, ignoring the pounding of his heart and the sting of the bullets that whizzed dangerously close. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached a safe clearing where other volunteer groups had assembled. Exhausted but triumphant, they hugged each other tightly, tears streaming down faces covered in dirt and sweat. Ruth, trembling, looked up at Emma. "You saved us," she whispered. Emma swallowed, tears forming in his eyes. "We all did. You're safe now." The news of the daring rescue spread quickly. The government's desperation deepened. Officials realized that the people were now directly confronting both insurgents and corruption, a double threat that could no longer be ignored. Rumors of resignations, hurried meetings, and attempts to control media coverage spread like wildfire. Chisom addressed the volunteers late that night, her voice calm but filled with unyielding determination. "Tonight we have saved lives. Tomorrow we continue. We cannot falter, we cannot rest. The government will try to suppress us. The insurgents will strike. But together, we are stronger than fear, stronger than bullets, stronger than the darkness that has ruled our lives for too long." Emma lay in the safe house later, exhaustion heavy in his bones. Daniel slept soundly beside him, finally at peace for the first time in weeks. Emma stared at the ceiling, thinking about the challenges ahead: more girls to rescue, more families to protect, and a government growing increasingly unpredictable. But in the darkness, he felt a spark of hope. The people were rising, courage was spreading. And no amount of violence or intimidation could stop them. The first rays of the sun stretched across the horizon, casting a pale light over Olorunda and the surrounding towns. Emma, Daniel, and the volunteer teams were already moving. Today was not just another rescue mission, it was the largest coordinated operation yet. Villages that had been under threat for months were finally within reach, and every hand, every heart, every pair of eyes mattered. Chisom stood atop a small hill, her figure silhouetted against the rising sun. Her voice carried over the teams assembled in the clearing. "Today, we fight not just for ourselves, but for the future of Nigeria. Every life saved is a blow to the corrupt and the cowardly. Remember your training. Stay together, protect each other. And above all, believe in the strength of the people." Emma tightened his grip on the map, memorizing every route, river crossing, and forest path. His team moved silently, shadows among shadows, hearts pounding in unison with the determined rhythm of thousands of others who were performing similar operations across the region. By midday, reports came in of insurgents attempting to ambush another volunteer team near the outskirts of Enugu. Emma's group changed course, taking a hidden trail through the forest, guided by Chisom's precise instructions over the radio. Every sound, snapping twigs, rustling leaves, distant voices set their nerves on edge. The fear of being discovered was constant, but so was the determination to succeed. Finally, they reached a small camp where several girls were being held. Emma froze for a moment, taking in the sight: tents haphazardly arranged, armed men resting carelessly, unaware of the storm about to descend upon them. Ruth and several others were inside. His chest tightened. The volunteers moved with disciplined precision. They neutralized guards quietly, herded the girls together, and began guiding them toward the exit routes. Just as they reached the edge of the forest, gunfire erupted. Emma dove to shield Ruth and the other girls. Bullets whizzed dangerously close, but the volunteers maintained formation, returning fire when necessary. Chisom, coordinating from a distance, shouted instructions. "Split into groups. Cover each other. Do not leave anyone behind. Emma and his team followed, guiding the rescued girls through the thick underbrush, over streams, and across fields. The insurgents, realizing they had lost control, attempted to regroup, but the volunteers were already converging from multiple directions. Cornered, the insurgents retreated, leaving chaos and fear in their wake. By evening, the safe zones were filled with rescued girls, families, and volunteers. The atmosphere was surreal relief mixed with exhaustion, grief tempered by victory. Emma watched Ruth reunite with Daniel, her face streaked with tears but glowing with hope. He felt an overwhelming surge of gratitude and pride. They had done it. The government, now fully aware of the citizens' strength, was panicking. Emergency meetings were convened in Abuja, officials were resigning in fear, and attempts to control media coverage proved futile. Every rescue, every protest, every act of courage by the citizens was being broadcast across the nation and the world. The people had become unstoppable. Chisom addressed the volunteers that night. We have achieved incredible victories. Many lives have been saved, and the corrupt can no longer ignore us. But our mission is not complete. We will continue to fight for justice, for safety, and for the reform that this nation desperately needs. Together, we have proven that change is possible. Together, we will build a Nigeria that listens to its people. Emma, exhausted and battered, sat quietly among the volunteers. He thought about the weeks that had passed, the fear, the courage, the losses, the victories. He realized that this movement had changed them all. They were no longer just citizens, they were warriors of hope, defenders of the innocent, and symbols of resistance against injustice. As the stars appeared over Olorunda that night, the country seemed to hold its breath. A wave of change had begun, and there was no turning back. The government's indifference had been shattered, the insurgents had been challenged, and the people had found their voice. Emma looked at Chisom, her eyes reflecting the flickering lights of the campfires, and whispered, "We've come so far. But the real challenge is just beginning." Chisom nodded, a silent promise in her gaze. "And we will face it together."